Hey, what's up guys, it's Disturbed, and today we're going to be taking a look at the formerly known as Frontline gear set, renamed to Defense in patch 1.5, and we're going to see if it's any good and actually if it's worth using. Now before I get into it, if you enjoyed the video, please make sure to drop a like, as it did take a little bit of time for me to make this video, and if you want to see videos similar to this one, feel free to subscribe and that would be highly appreciated. But with that out of the way, let's get right into it. So starting off, let's just take a look at the set bonuses, and then we'll just go over how it actually plays into the game. So for wearing two pieces of the set, you get 15% protection from elites. So right off the bat, you can tell the set is going to be oriented for PvE. That's what the developers are intending, specifically for being tanky in that sense. It's not the best 2 set in the world, but it will provide a significant reduction in damage, which is, pretty nice. But moving on to the 3 set, it gives you an additional 30% health to your ballistic shield. This is obviously going to be paired to work with the 4 set bonus of the gear set, which is oriented around using the shield. But now for the 4 set, it reads, allows using an SMG if one is equipped with the ballistic shield deployed. SMG crit chance is then reduced to 0%. So basically, when you use this set, you can now use the ballistic shield as an SMG equipped, which is pretty cool. You can still aim down sight with the SMG, and you can still hip fire, as you can see in the gameplay. But the only downside is that your SMG's crit chance is going to be reduced to 0%. And the only way to actually get crit chance is through using the precision talent or using a pulse. Any of the crit chance on your gear, weapon mods, anything like that will not be active. You can only get it through your pulse. And since your SMG is highly dependent on crit damage, you end up losing out on a lot of DPS. You just basically cripple your SMG with the built-in crit damage, and then all the gear mods being revolved around crit damage. You lose a lot of damage. So in order to compensate for this, or at least to make some changes based upon this, you need to make a few gear changes. For example, on your scope and muzzle, try to get as much headshot damage as possible. On certain SMGs, you can get headshot damage scopes. Mine doesn't have the ability for it, but on some you can, because you're not really going to be critting that often, because with the precision talent, that will only give you around a 7% crit chance, and the highest that you'll get from pulse, even if you're using like really high scope power, probably only be around 20%. So headshot damage is going to be much more valuable if you can get that there, because you're probably going to be headshotting way more than 20% of the time. That's why, you'd rather go for headshot damage over crit damage. And then on the grip, you can either go for optimal range or reload speed or something. Crit damage wouldn't be that bad because you are critting every once in a while, though I'd probably opt for reload speed, but it is dependent on what you have available. And on the magazine, pretty much it's the same thing. You can go for rate of fire and reload speed. And then on the gloves, instead of getting crit chance, because that will do virtually nothing, I went for damage to elites and SMG damage, and I kept the crit damage because I will be critting every once in a blue moon with having the precision talent on. So now let's get into how good it is and how it actually works in game. Firstly, let's talk about PvP and if this build is viable at all for it. Just from the set bonuses, we can tell this build was aimed towards being tanky in a PvE context, but regardless of the intentions of the developers, people will inevitably use and try out things in PvP. So I decided to try it out, and if I'm being perfectly honest, I don't think it's worth it to use this in PvP at all for almost any reason. For some reason, or maybe for some people, if you're in a group and you know how to play with it really well, I kind of find it hard to believe that that's possible. But if for whatever reason, maybe there's just something I'm missing and you can be really good with it in PvP, then it may be good for you. But the ballistic shield doesn't really give you any huge advantage that any other gear set would be giving you. You just have a huge shield on your back that can, or not on your back, that's in front of you, that can be shot down rather easily. It doesn't take a lot of bullets to shoot it down. And then with the shield on, you lack a lot of mobility and a lot of damage. So it's incredibly easier for me to just like throw a grenade on you and run behind you and chain headshots, which is a huge problem. So unless you've dedicated hours upon hours to learn how to perfectly use it in a group scenario, then I just highly recommend never using it, because you'll most likely just get stomped on by other players due to the lack of mobility and significantly low DPS. There just really isn't any viable reason that I can see to use it. So I'd recommend straying away from it in PvP. Like, I actually played against some people that were using it. They weren't doing like any damage to me, just shooting marshmallows, and then all I had to do was just sprint behind them, shoot them a few times in the head, and they died near instantly. So I don't think it's worth it to use this build at all in PvP. So with PvP out of the way, let's take a look at how it is in a PvE context against NPCs and whatnot. Honestly, I'm not sure if this build was oriented or meant for solo play or for group play. In the gameplay, you can see me using it in solo play, which seems to work out perfectly fine, and I'll get more into that in a bit. But I honestly can't see this build being viable with a whole group. Sure, you get all the NPCs to shoot at you, but if they're scaled to 4 players and the whole point is for you to just be a target dummy and just take all the damage from your players, your shield will probably just get easily shot down, and you will result in not doing that much damage. And honestly, I don't think there's really a need right now for a tank to be mitigating the damage, because they're just so much easier to kill now than they were in any previous patch. And even in like 1.3 or something, I still don't think it would be worth it for somebody to run a tank build, because like I said, the shield is just going to get shot down really quickly. Then that is another person on your team not doing damage. and I just don't feel the need for it. I don't think it fits in the game right now, just with the way that this game plays. Like, you know, a lot of the NPCs aren't even going to be focusing on you. Some of them will be shooting your teammates. It just doesn't fit into the gameplay of this game. So I really don't see the point in having somebody running the ballistic shield in group play over something like Alpha Bridge, which would let you do probably more than 3 times more damage. So I'm just going to not even talk about group play, just going to talk about solo play. So back to how it works in solo play. As you can see in the gameplay, I'm having absolutely no problems with the NPCs. It's fairly easy to kill them, and I rarely ever get close to dying. But keep in mind though that this is only a challenge mode mission, and my build is nearly perfectly min-maxed. There are a few things that I could have done, like gotten better gear mods and everything, but I had perfectly rolled gear, I had perfectly rolled weapons, I just needed better gear mods. So my build is pretty much perfect. And if you don't have that good of gear or as good as a build that I have, and you're trying to like solo the underground on heroic or something that isn't as easy as a challenge mode mission, you may have more of a problem ahead of you. But nonetheless, there are still some more issues regarding this build. The lack of mobility is a huge one, and it leaves me taking way longer to clear out a room using the ballistic shield than if I weren't, just because I'm walking at the pace of a snail carrying this massive hunk of metal, which honestly for me at least makes the gameplay feel pretty boring and kind of lackluster. I don't like just walking around sluggishly and then every once in a while killing guys and then people, you know, appearing behind me and then I have to slowly turn around. I just don't like it. I just don't like the way that feels. It's just a personal preference type of thing. But for me, it just makes me feel hindered and not in a good way. So that's another downside. And on top of that, you just won't be doing like a ton of damage now that you have the shield. The shield does give you an extra damage boost, but since you're tied to using an SMG, and SMGs aren't particularly great in PvE when compared to LMGs and assault rifles, just due to the fact that LMGs have bigger mags, higher base damage, and then higher headshot damage, and then same thing with assault rifles, and they have enemy armor damage built in, higher base damage. So SMGs aren't that great in PvE already, and then mix that with the lack of crit chance and the lack of gear set bonuses, you're doing barely any damage in comparison to somebody that's going to be using Alpha Bridge with SMGs and like perfectly rolled talents and everything. So that's another huge downside. One of the only benefits that I really see to using this build is that it's very hard for you to die, but that's with a perfectly min-max build. I've only tried it with a perfect build. If you didn't have a good build like I did, you'd probably have much more of an issue actually killing the NPCs efficiently due to the lack of high damage, which may result in you getting swarmed by a few shotgunners because you can't kill them quick enough, and that could end up being an issue. But regardless of the damage being a problem, even with this build being extremely tanky, I can just as easily put on an Alpha Bridge solo build that I made for patch 1.4 that utilizes Predatory. Still will work perfectly fine at 1.5, but it utilizes Predatory and health on kills so that I'm basically invincible. Pair that with a few other talents and a huge amount of damage, I'm doing upwards of 2 to 3 times more damage, therefore completing content significantly faster. The gameplay will be much more enjoyable, at least for me, and I'll just have just as much, if not more, survivability. It'll just be way more fun. I'll be doing more damage. It's just all benefits there, as opposed to walking around slowly, not doing a lot of damage, and just kind of being boring. So all in all, I don't think the set is that great, which is pretty unfortunate. In PvP, it's pretty easy to counter, and the lack of damage and mobility, which is probably the biggest downfall of the set, makes it near useless, unless in the hands of the right player, and even then I still don't think it's worth it to use, because you'd probably be much better off using something else that would give you more damage and versatility. And in PvE, where this build is supposed to shine, it functions decently, but again, the lack of damage and mobility is its biggest flaw. And it still pales in comparison to other builds such as Alpha Bridge, though it is decent if you have nothing else. Just know that completing content will be rather time consuming and possibly boring depending upon your playstyle. So yeah guys, that's pretty much it for my review on the new defense gear set in patch 1.5. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to drop a like and subscribe for videos similar to this one. I'll see you later guys.